It is Monday, December 2nd, 2024. This is another edition of Football Today, presented to you by Captain Morgan, the official spiced rum of the NFL. That is Bobby Skinner. I am Chris Rose, producer Connor along for the ride as well. However, Justin Pennick is not with us. What'd you do to him this weekend, Bobby?
He said something about pH and a jacuzzi, and as a former pool guy, you always travel with your test kit whenever you're vacationing and planning to go into a body of water. Just irresponsible from him.
Yeah, well, he was in Columbus, Ohio for the big upset, the Wolverines over the Buckeyes. I thought maybe he had been in the middle of the fracas
Yeah, he
post
should
game.
have gotten down there, honestly.
Yeah.
It looked insane. And it has this always been a thing where it's just like, all right, rivalry weekend, road team wins, plants a flag, fight. It felt like every single game on Saturday was just road team wins, plant the flag, fight.
Yeah, it was a little odd. Now, we've seen it in recent years. Baker Mayfield did that in Columbus several years ago when he quarterbacked the Oklahoma Sooners to a big win up there. But I can't remember if that is that like officially part of the game plan? Is that up on the big chalkboard that the coaches are going over? So when we win, we will plant said flag.
I mean, it really seemed like it. It seemed like college football did it to drum up interest. If you want to get into a conspiracy theory,
Yeah.
thing here.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the NFL. It is time for our La Vida Más Fina game of the week. It is brought to you by Corona, and it happened Sunday night in a winter wonderland. We had our second snow globe game of the season. The home teams have won both. Cleveland took care of Pittsburgh a few Thursdays ago, and now Buffalo has secured a spot in the playoffs. They win their fifth straight AFC East crown, a 35-10 Sunday night winner over the San Francisco 49ers. And I got to tell you, Bobby, they still have a chance at the one seed to take over that role from the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think it is huge for them because I don't think any team is built better to play in the snow and play in a home atmosphere than the Buffalo Bills mid-January on.
Except for the Kansas City Chiefs, because they had that Miami. I know the Dolphins aren't what the Bills are, but they had that game last year, and the more and more we see the Ravens' flaws pop up a little bit, and there's a big flaw with them that I'm really not excited to talk about, but worried about with them. It really does seem like the AFC is going to go through the Chiefs or the Bills. Once again, and I hope to God we don't have one of these teams loses in the playoffs to avoid this matchup, because I want this matchup. But I'm one of those people, Rose. I got to see you do it before I give it to you. I think the Chiefs are still the favorite. I mean, they have the better record. At the moment, the Chiefs have the home field advantage. If obviously it goes to a tiebreaker, it goes to the Bills. They're 3-0 against the Bills in the playoffs. The Chiefs are getting Hollywood Brown back to go with Hopkins and Worthy. Pacheco's back, and Hunt did pretty well in his absence. And we know that defense shines in the playoffs. It may not be as good as last year's defense, but they're still top 10. And we saw the Chiefs look worse last year, and they ended up winning it all when the Bills were stronger on paper and the Ravens were much stronger on paper and in reality. I still give someone's got to do it to the Chiefs before I give it to them.
Yeah, I would say, though, that Josh Allen is playing at an exceptional level, and his numbers are not nearly as good as they have been in seasons past. But I think that part of the reason is because they figured out how to properly use James Cook. I still don't love the rest of their skill guys. I know that Dalton Kincaid hasn't been there, and when he does return, I do think that he creates some mismatches against other teams, and maybe they'll learn how to utilize him the proper way over the last month of the regular season. Matt Milano back.
That could be big.
That is certainly going to help them. Listen, they just totally outclassed a team last night that is, I think, kind of packing it in for the 2024 season. They're only 2 games behind the Seahawks there in the NFC West, but now you add Christian McCaffrey likely being done for the season. And I know we're kind of taking a different tangent in this game, but I think you can't help but at least mention that for a team that's made 4 of the last 5 NFC title games, that the Niners season, basically, I'll see in 2025.
Yeah, it's these 2 games, this Bills game and then last week's Packers game, where they had to win at least one of these games to stay alive. And then when you see Brock Purdy was out for the Packers game, like, okay, that's probably the season right there. And then, like you mentioned, they just haven't looked very good. Whether it's missing Ayuk, McCaffrey being injured and then coming back and not as good as he was last year. Defensively, they seem a little soft up front. It feels like well, it's not feels like it's an off year for an extremely talented team, and Brock Purdy's up for an extension this offseason. It's going to be a really interesting off season for the 49ers and how they go about things, because I know they're not going to just live with this, right? Like, there's going to be talks about Shanahan and everything. It'll be interesting to see what their approach is on this.
Well, we can stop with those talks about Shanahan. I mean, please.
The fan base calls for his head. They call for his head after the Super Bowls.
Who would you rather? I always love this.
But we know York is not the best, most stable owner in the NFL either.
Okay.
They shouldn't. If Shanahan hit the open market, he'd be the number one head coaching hire. But I don't trust York.
Okay. But I mean, don't you think most of the Niners' problems have been injury based this year?
Sure, but I will also say this. They're not injured enough to where they shouldn't be above 500.
I don't know, man.
They got a lot of talent on that team that's still playing.
They do. I think you couple it, and I don't want to make a stop in Excuseville, but what I would say is that their schedule has been as brutal as anybody, with the number of East Coast trips they've got to make, the number of teams they play where the other team's coming off of a bye. It has not been an easy way for them this year.
And they've blown games too.
They have blown. There's no question.
There's like 3 games where you look at it and like, if you're 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, like, you should win this game, and they didn't do that. So I just I don't want to write this 49ers year off as just like injury. Injuries definitely played a part, but regardless of their injuries, they're way too talented to be under 500.
Okay.
And if Brock Purdy's that guy, he should have them above 500.
All right. Before we put this game to bed, I am curious if the Bills, and they're only one game behind the Chiefs for home field advantage in the AFC. Remember, they do have the regular season head-to-head tiebreaker.
Right.
If the Bills are able to get that 1 seed, how much will that change your mind in terms of that making them the favorite?
Not much, because we saw the Chiefs go into Buffalo and do it last year. With these two teams, the home field advantage doesn't mean much to me, because they're both going to be cold areas. I think both teams have the quarterbacks who can win in any type of environment. With these two teams, home field advantage doesn't really mean anything to me. It can mean something in their other matchups, but when it's them head to head, I'm really not letting that sway me one way or the other.
Yeah, and by the way, I think that Buffalo could win in Kansas City. I mean, they
absolutely. Again, I really think that game will come down to whoever has the last possession. That's the way it's gone historically.
Oh, I like that. I'm digging that. Once again, that is our game of the week. It was brought to you by Corona. You know what we always try to be around here? A fan that never loses. And here's what we mean. Our team doesn't always win every single game, but when they lose, we still love the game, because whether it's a big deep ball or some third or fourth short conversion or just a tailgate out there in the parking lot, there is always something to cheer for. And the best beer to pair with those awesome moments, it is Corona. Corona is all about finding the maximum amount of joy within every moment of the game. So win or lose, home of the road, it is the perfect beer to go along with watching football and all the moments that come along with it. So cheers to everybody who loves the game beyond the scoreboard. Corona, for the fan who never, ever loses. Get yours at ordercorona.com for 21 and over. Relax responsibly. Corona Extra Beer. It is imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois. We continue on here on Football Today with a stop in the AFC North. Highest scoring battle ever in the matchup between the Steelers and the Bengals. Steelers take that one on the road. 44-38 is your final. And in the meantime, a matchup of possible MVP candidates. The Philadelphia Eagles take care of the Baltimore Ravens on the road. 24-19 is the final. So that means the Steelers currently have a 1.5 game lead over the Baltimore Ravens with the last month plus to play. Are you willing to say, Bobby Skinner, the division race is over?
No, I think it's as tight as it's going to be. So, like you mentioned, the Ravens are up 1.5 games. Ravens have their bye week this week. Steelers next 5 games. Browns
Ravens are back 1.5 games. Steelers are up 1.5 games.
Yeah, sorry, excuse me. Steelers next 5 games. You have the Browns, Ravens, Eagles, Chiefs, and Bengals. The Ravens last 4 are Giants, Steelers, Texans, Browns. So I'm predicting, according to my model, both these teams will be 11-5, and then that leaves the head-to-head matchup between the two. And even if the Ravens are, 10-6, and the Steelers are 11-5 outside of that game, I don't know how the tiebreaker would go if they split the series. So like if the Steelers have already locked up that tiebreaker, it might be a little tough. But I think it's going to really come down to their head-to-head matchup in 2 or 3 weeks or whatever it ends up being. Now the Steelers have control of that, right? Beat the Eagles or the Chiefs, and it's probably over. But I really think it comes down to that head-to-head matchup.
Your tiebreakers, just in case, when it's strictly two clubs for the division, head-to-head. So if they split that, then you go to best one-loss tied percentage in games played within the division. Then it is best percentage in common games. That's the third one. So that's kind of the next one that you want to focus on once you get past head-to-head and divisional record. Am I willing to say that it's over? I got to be honest with you. I am pretty close to saying that all four divisions in the AFC are over. I don't think that the Colts are catching the Texans in the AFC South. Obviously, the Bills punched their ticket to their fifth straight AFC East crown. Chargers aren't getting the Chiefs in the AFC West. And this one, there are serious deficiencies with the Baltimore Ravens. Like, this was a perfect example of what they're going to see in the playoffs, whether they're home and road. They're going to face most likely a team that can play a little bit of defense, and the Eagles' defense has been the best in football during this 8-game winning streak. And they were going to hold the Ravens to a season low until they scored a nothing touchdown with seconds to go. The Ravens just couldn't get squat going offensively after the first quarter.
Yeah, I agree. But here's the thing I'm most worried about with the Ravens, because those things are all true. But at the end of the day, it was a neck. This game was neck and neck until the Eagles got that final touchdown. Justin Tucker, it's not just I actually think he could cost them playoff wins. I mean, let's look at 4 of their losses. They missed a field goal and a 3-point loss to the Raiders, missed a field goal and a 5-point loss to the Browns, so that doesn't make the difference, but maybe it changes the end of the game. Then they missed 2 field goals and a 2-point loss to the Steelers. That makes a difference. And then 2 field goals and an extra point and a 5-point loss to the Eagles. That's really concerning for them. But let me ask, I know the Steelers beat the Ravens 2 weeks ago. Do you playoffs, Matt? Playoffs come. Are you picking Steelers or Ravens to beat any given team in the AFC?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, is that you don't expect the Steelers to put up 44 points. That was their most they had put up actually in 6 years. And it came against the Cincinnati Bengals defense that is atrocious at best.
Yeah.
Here's the question. Do you trust the Steelers enough to score 24 against the Chiefs or the Bills?
I kind of do, man. 20.
Well,
I'm not.
They can win the game,
right? So, I think the Steelers team is good enough to win in the playoffs. But I also think the Ravens are as well too. And then tie might go to the quarterback. But at the end of the day, Steelers did win that matchup, and the next matchup will play a big part of how we feel about them. But I think what the Steelers have shown is they can put it on some bad teams, and they can put up enough against bad defenses, put up enough against good defenses to where their defense can win the game for them. And this AFC is extremely flawed, right? Bills are flawed, Chiefs are flawed, Ravens are flawed, Broncos are flawed. Chargers, and hell, the Steelers have beaten 3 of those teams. They've beaten the Broncos, they've beaten the Chargers, they've beaten the Ravens. This Steelers, I think this AFC is more wide open than it's ever been. Where in the past it's quarterback, quarterback, quarterback. I really think it's about which defense plays the best in the playoffs. Simplistic as that puts it.
With the Steelers, you're going to find out over a 3-week span. On December 15th, they're at Philly. The next week, they are at Baltimore. The next week, it's a Christmas Day home game against the Chiefs.
Right.
Now, the Eagles and the Chiefs, their defenses are as good as anybody in the league.
Mm-hmm.
If they can hang with them in those games, and if they win at least one of those 2, one's on the road, one is at home, then I would be willing to say that yes, I think the Steelers could make a run to the Super Bowl because we know the defense is good enough too. But if you look at their schedule from this year, the most points they scored against a what I would call as a good defense. I mean, they scored in the 30s against the Raiders. They scored in the 30s against the Jets. They scored 28 against the Commanders, who are okay, but they haven't put up a big number against a really good defense. Now, they haven't played a ton of them. They played the Chargers. They had 20 against them. They played the Broncos in week 2. Now, that seems like a lifetime ago, but they won that game 13-6. So they haven't shown us that they can put up more than 20 against a really good defense. So in that little 3-week span, and I'm going to throw the Ravens in there, even though they aren't on the same defensive level as those other teams, Philadelphia and Kansas City, but it's a really tough game on the road. In that 3-week span, I will reserve judgment until then about the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. Like, win one of the games versus the Eagles and the Chiefs, and I feel good about you. But I feel so much like the Steelers were a hot topic beginning of the year because they were winning games, and I thought their offense was horrible. Since Russell Wilson has come in, they've been a good offense. They have not been a great offense. They've been a good offense, where before they couldn't put 44 on the Bengals' head. You know, they scored 37 on the Jets and then 26 on the Giants. Scoring 18 is their worst performance. Their worst performance is scoring 18, 6 field goals. That was, celebrated as one of their better performances against the Falcons week 1, where they're talking about how efficient they are. That's their worst performance under Russell Wilson in a game that they won. And then you have the Browns game, which it was pouring down snow where they scored 19 in that one. And that's a pretty talented defense despite the fact that team's kind of falling apart. So you can make an argument for the Steelers. Now, again, I think the Ravens are still just as deadly, but I'm worried about their kicker situation because you have Lamar, who's going to win MVP most likely this year because it's a quarterback award. You have a running back in Derrick Henry who would be up for it. We've seen him do it in the playoffs before. And that defense, despite the fact that it hasn't been great this year, we've seen it play pretty well against the last 2 weeks against the Eagles and the Steelers, and does have, some all-pro level players like Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton, and their corners are playing well. Like, it's, their pass rushers aren't awful. Like, they've gotten better compared to where they were in the beginning of the year. They figured out some of their offensive line issues. Like, we're Justin Tucker, who's supposed to be the best kicker in the league, away being good from them being a 2-loss team, and we're talking about them maybe being the favorite in the AFC. With the kicker injuries, they're not even the favorite in their own division right now.
And the Justin Tucker storyline is insane because he came into this season with the highest field goal percentage in the history of the sport. He had connected on more than 90% of his field goals in his career. Now, between field goal misses and PATs, he has missed 10 kicks this year. That is the worst in the NFL, and it's shocking. And John Harbaugh was asked about it afterward, and he said, listen, am I willing to get rid of him right now? No, I'm not. But if his name wasn't Justin Tucker, you damn well better be sure that they'd be looking for another kicker. So that is bizarre. I want to leave.
They need to put one on their practice squad. Like, I think it's at a point where they need to prepare for it, because at the end of the day, like, Justin Tucker is Justin Tucker. If he struggles down the stretch, they need to get someone on their practice squad right now, because you don't want to hurt his feelings, but you got to be prepared for the playoffs, because it'd be different between making a Super Bowl and not.
Which is bizarre. One last point, and I just want to spend 30 seconds on this. I don't know if you saw the post-game press conferences for Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, but those guys looked as despondent as you can see football players, because they are arguably two of the best at their positions. They have the leading sack player in Trey Hendrickson in the NFL. And this team sucks. Like, they have wasted an entire season of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase prime. They still have to figure out the contract with Jamar Chase. They're going to let T. Higgins walk after this season. They have spent a tremendous amount of draft capital on the defensive side of the football, and it actually is getting worse, not better. This team has failed Burrow and Chase to the nth degree.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned it. 9 of their last 10 first-round picks have been on the defensive side of the ball. Actually, that's not correct, right? Someone that tweeted that yesterday was wrong, because they have Chase and Burrow in that time frame.
I'll give you what you can. In the top 3 rounds of the last 3 drafts, they've had 10 total picks. 7 have been on defense.
Okay.
That's accurate. Okay.
Maybe that's where I went wrong.
Yeah.
Somebody tweeted that out, and I'm not mad at them. But they again, this is what we talked about on the preview shows. Like, this offense fools you into believing them, but they're so bad on defense. They're such a bad rushing offense that despite the fact that they are the best passing offense in the NFL right now, like I don't think there's even a debate that anybody's a better passing offense in the NFL. They're not going to make the playoffs because despite the fact that usually equating to being a good team doesn't matter with the Bengals because they're a bad team despite the fact that they have the most important thing in football down.
Yeah, listen, it's been rough because I know I picked them to make the Super Bowl. Pennick picked them to win the Super Bowl. I'll see you in 2025 and get back to me later. We still have a little bit of news to go with a quarterback who maybe shouldn't be playing. That is all coming your way. But first, Bobby Skinner with this word.
I want to talk to you guys about something. And it's DraftKings. Today's episode is sponsored by DraftKings. Grab your favorite team's jersey and some snacks and head to the couch for another Sunday, Domingo of action-packed football and get even closer to the action each Sunday with our partners at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, all new customers who bet just $5 will get $150 in bonus bets if your bets wins when you use code FOOTBALL today. Stay in on the action and use your $150 in bonus bets on DraftKings same-game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. And if sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. Don't stop your worrying right now. You can still join in all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use promo code FOOTBALL today. Bet just $5 on any wager and get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. That's promo code FOOTBALL today only at DraftKings Sportsbook. You'll be glad you did.
All right, we continue on and focus on the NFC South, where the Falcons and the Buccaneers both have a 6-6 record. Falcons win the tiebreaker because they won the season series and swept the Bucs. The bad news is for the Falcons, they have dropped 3 in a row. Kirk Cousins, a 4-interception game and a 17-13 home loss against the Los Angeles Chargers. And now people are talking about job security for the veteran whom they brought in on a $100 million free agent contract. It sounds like the Falcons are going to stick with Kirk Cousins. Should they?
Yes, but I'm so glad that this is happening to them because this is what they get for drafting Michael Penix instead of Jared Verse. Who, we did our mocks and our shows. It's like this is the Jared Verse. This is where the first defensive players should go off the board. And I know they finally had a decent pass rush game yesterday, but if Michael Penix was there, the Falcons fan base, I'm sure someone would be unhappy, but they'd also be pointing out the fact that they've played literally the number 1 and number 2 defense in the NFL the last 2 games, right? So, in the Chargers and the Broncos, some pretty 2 good defenses. By the way, they played the number 5 one this week. They'd point out that they're 4th in passing yards. It's been a bad few games, but their passing offense has been pretty good. It's like, despite the fact that they've lost 3 in a row, we're still tied for the division lead, and we have the tiebreaker with the Bucs. But instead, we get to talk about Michael Penix. And should we put Michael Penix in? And the heat's going to be there, and it's going to make it uncomfortable for Kirk Cousins. And there's rumors of him not wanting to be here after this year. I'm so glad that this is happening because this is what they get. And I find it funny that both of Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix's last games played are both looking like shit against the Jesse Minter defense.
That's a great call right there. It wasn't just that he threw 4 interceptions. 4 interceptions on its own is bad enough.
They were all bad, too. Sometimes not every interception is made equal.
No, and the one that Marcus May picked off in the back of the end zone, right? The Falcons were down. I believe it was still 17-13 in the 4th.
Yeah.
It was 3rd down, and I don't know if Cousins was trying to throw it away. If so, it was the worst throwaway I've ever seen because he kind of lollipopped it. And I think he was trying to get it to Darnell Mooney, but I'm still not sure. And, listen, if you're a veteran, you've got 3 points. You've got 3 points in the bag, even for Young Wei Koo, who's really been struggling. But they're at the point in the field where, come on, he's got to connect on something like that. So you throw it away. You live to see another day. You end up kicking the field goal. You'll be down 1. You get a defensive stop. You get the ball back. Maybe you kick the game-winning field goal. Who knows? Instead, turnover. You're down 4. You have to play for a touchdown in your last drive. Just horrific, horrific stuff. And this is not what you pay 9 figures to. And look, this is not the time. If you put Michael Penix in, you're sacrificing the division because now you're talking about starting from scratch and you're really playing for 2025 and beyond. You can't afford to do that to the rest of the locker room when you still have the upper hand when you're talking about first place in the division.
Yeah, and again, you paid him this money. You don't pay him to bench him halfway through, right? It'd be one thing if they were the worst passing offense in football, but in reality, this is a bad 3-game stretch by Kirk Cousins where he was playing pretty well otherwise. But now here's the thing: it's not just a bad stretch; it's been an awful stretch. Like in these last 3 games, he's dead last in EPA per play for quarterbacks. Now he was top 10 before that, but it's just you got to pray that this is just a bad stretch and not indicative of what you're going to see at towards the end of the year and lose yourself the division. Because in the end of the day, it's about having a better record over the next 5 weeks than Tampa, or an equal record to the Tampa Bay Bucks over the next 5 games.
All right, in the 30 seconds that we've got left, do you think it's a quarterback competition next year in camp?
I'm not so sure that Kirk Cousins is there.
Or do you think he gets traded?
I think he wants to be traded.
Wow. Now that would open some doors up because automatically, well, I don't know if automatically because of the price tag that comes with it and the fact that you would have to trade for him most likely, but he would be more sought after than Sam Darnold or Jameis Winston, right?
I don't know because I think there's the Falcons would have to eat a big cap hit of that.
I agree. Yeah.
So yes, I do think so. But here's the thing: is I don't think because of that cap hit, I don't see how it makes sense for the Falcons. But this is what the mess the Falcons have put themselves in. Where I don't think Kirk Cousins wants to be there past this year, especially if this season doesn't finish off the best way. If they either miss the playoffs or make the playoffs at 8-9 and have a bad offensive performance in the first round. I can see a reality where he just doesn't want to be there.
Well, you mentioned it. They get the number 5 defense in the NFL. That would be his old stomping grounds, the Minnesota Vikings, this coming Sunday. That should be a blast. For Bobby Skinner and Justin Pennick, we certainly hope he is feeling better. And producer Connor, bang up job in your first producing effort. That way, Connor, way to get it done. I am Chris Rose. We will see you on Friday for the next edition of Football Today, presented to you by Captain Morgan, the official spiced rum of the NFL.